The gellar field is a device that creates a bubble of normal reality surrounding a ship in the warp that keeps the demons at bay. But it can do a lot more than that. What or who powers them? How are psykers affected in the bubble? What happens to someone in the warp outside it? How did the dark mechanicum use it to create powerful artifacts? Let's begin. Let's look at some basics first. How is it powered? And related, how does it affect a psyker in the warp? To the psychically aware, it created a weird echo that crept from the stern to the prow. The reality within the field reflected back the physical space, now enclosed, bringing with it an unnatural sense of claustrophobia. Niall was conditioned psychically and mentally to overcome all sense of fear or distress, but his Space Marine modifications and his librarian training could do nothing to rid him completely of the sense of entrapment that shuddered through his soul, and its power source, the gellar field, sealed completely, vibrating slightly with the catatonic thoughts of the poor psyker enclosed in the bowels of the ship, whose soul was being processed to create the protective shield, and who dreams of hitting the like button to help this little channel get attention from the Algor sire. So one day you fancy a little void walking, and the ship you're in goes into the warp. What happens to you outside the ship and its gellar field bubble? The ship had entered the warp. He'd seen it coming. They'd all seen it coming. The way the stars twisted in their astral sockets, and the way the ship itself groaned right through its metal core. A few of his warriors had leapt from the ship's back, sailors abandoning a sinking ship to die a freezing death in the endless void rather than be dragged into the sea of souls. One moment he was bootlocked to the ship's hull, axe in hand, hewing into the sloped iron to hack his way back in. The next he was drowning, asphyxiating in liquid fire, suffocating even as it disintegrated him from the outside and incinerated him from within. He died a dozen deaths in a single heartbeat, and he felt every single one of them, as had his brothers. When the molten sludge flowed over the ship, blanketing them all, he'd seen most of them lose their grips on the hull. Warriors he'd served with for decades, even centuries, spun away in the boiling madness of warp space, screaming as they dissolved. Several lingered by their burning bones in a shrieking spectral form, before the raging tides ate at their very soul stuff, immolating even that, before carrying the residue back to be diluted through the tumbling waves. Sometimes there's more than one field layer. They use a two-tier type of protection in the warp. That's what we'll look at next. Like all warp-capable vessels, battle barges are protected by gellar fields, arcane devices that create a bubble of real space around the ship as it passes through the tides of the materium. Unlike Imperial Navy warships that are required to spend large portions of their deployment guarding a single system and who are called upon to travel in the warp infrequently, battle barges are in constant motion, travelling from one war zone to the next without respite. Such frequent warp travel puts these prized vessels at great risk, and as such they are frequently outfitted with two interconnected gellar fields. Should one fail, the other will continue to protect the battle barge from the warp's hostile environment and the foul entities that dwell there. Yet this extra precaution has not always proven enough. The denizens of that twisted realm are relentless, and on at least one occasion have conspired to breach both layers simultaneously. And with careful guidance, two ships can also create more than one layer. The ship's bridgemaster's crew brought the area glories closer and closer until the glimmering non-matter of her gellar field brushed that of the Velidus. Cogitators, programmed for just such tasks, passed orders via festoons of golden comb wire and mechadendrites to servitors using scouring scopes to measure the energy spectra being broadcast from the other black ship. By agonizing moments, they brought the vessel's protective envelope into synchronicity with its neighbour. Like two bubbles meeting on the surface of a pond, they touched one another, shifted, and finally emerged together. Such an operation was a difficult one. The field can also up your blood pressure when you're within it by slowly going down as the soul energy in the warp around it applies pressure. Lower gellar field level to 40%, Semper ordered, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. There was a deep groan from all around him, the ship's hull starting to buckle inwards as the forces of the warp pressed in all around the weakened gellar field, and many of the Adeptus Mechanicus adepts on the bridge cried out in fear, believing it to be the angry voice of the machine god spirit inhabiting the Macarius. Magos Castoborus let his adepts cry out and led them in fevered prayer, knowing that the warp field could not maintain its integrity for more than 1 or 2 minutes at such a low level. Also, when in the warp, the projected field from the gellar device can be so strongly stitched up it makes the ship able to pass the things there almost stealthily. The ship's sight-blind navigator took it through the routes that were little known, the barely charted passages that the upper echelons of the imperial government kept off the maps given to the common admiralty. These were swift routes but treacherous ones, causeways through the atemporal realm that large ships would never have been able to take, the sole light glitter of the massive crews bright enough that they would attract the living storms that wheeled and turned, while Ultio passed by unnoticed. The phantom ship was barely there, its gellar field was such finely-tuned opacity, and its engines such speed that the lumbering, predatory intelligences that existed inside warp space noted it only by the wake it left behind. The science behind these can be used for an explosive reaction. Another one I have done a video on recently, and we will mention here, is the gellar device, a bomb that goes off in the materium, and as its bubble of normal reality expands, it forces those touched by the powers of the warp away. Demons in flesh bodies will be forced out and warp rifts closed, for example. They can also be used in a medical style way, and to me one of the most intriguing ones I came across when I was doing research, cutting up demons with the gellar device. The Corpus Vivixosessio is a technical tract drawn from the collected Maleficia writings and the experiments of a dark Mechanicus sect called the Daemons. You know this sect? Clute asked. Their shame is secret but still haunts the infra tombs of the cult Mechanicus on Mars, Torquil told him dourly. The Daemons has perfected the art of summoning demonic entities into corporal form whilst using arcane and experimental gellar technologies to perform demonic vivisections. Their belief was that the warp creatures were solely the sum of their parts. In fact, it was their parts that interested the group the most. They created obscene fusions of harvested infernal organs and Mechanicus technologies from their tortured demonic subjects and bound exercised essences to artifacts and weaponry. These pages describe the design and orientation of the gellar technologies required to vivisect a captured demonic entity. For greater context, this group believe that the power of a demon can be taken by extracting the demon's essence and then putting this into artifacts to create powerful weapons, like a demon engine on a basic level. They were found by the Ordo Malleus, and the Grey Knights killed them all, and the planet they were based on was ended with Exterminatus, but yet their art escaped this end, and is still rumoured to be around in certain dark fringes of the 40k galaxy. If you like this video on gellar fields, also try this one.